5 years ago, I would have never imagined that the US government would be lying to us. I mean, that's something that you hear about in the movies, and they're talking about Russia, former Soviet Union, they're talking about China. But as I've personally experienced the 2024 job market, and as I've been doing research and reading different articles and hearing your stories from doing this YouTube channel for the past few months, it's really quite surprising how many lies we're being told as Americans. And I guess I could have always assumed that they're lying to us about the health of cereal and Pop-Tarts and things of that nature, and probably fast food as well, like McDonald's and Burger King. But just hearing the amount of lies that have come out from official government reports has been really quite shocking. And it really makes you feel like you're going crazy, like you're paranoid, like you're losing your mind. Because the reality of this situation is myself and thousands of other people in this country are really struggling to find jobs. Yet when we look at official government reports from the US, not from Russia, not from China, not from North Korea, they are saying that everything is good. They are saying that we have a booming economy, that they're creating jobs left and right. We're hearing reports from even as recently as September that 254,000 jobs have been created and that there's no issue. If you want a job, you can absolutely get one. The problem is that does not match reality. The reality is it's extremely difficult. And yes, you can land some kind of job, but that's just like saying that if you really want to be in a relationship, you can be in one. Now, it doesn't matter if he abuses you, if he's cheating on you, if he treats you terribly or not. You can just be in one, right? It's a similar thing with a job. Yeah, you can get a job. I mean, it might be a gig work. You might be dropping off strangers to the airport at 3 in the morning. You might be delivering people's food and getting no tip and doing irreparable damage to your car by constantly delivering food. And yeah, I mean, your shocks are all messed up and you gotta get an oil change every month and the prices of gas are not helping you out either. And you might not even be making a profit, but you can technically get a job. They'll pay you to do something. Or maybe it's just multiple part-time jobs when you've always had a full-time job. Or maybe all you can find is one part-time job and that doesn't give you benefits, there's no PTO, there's no health care for yourself, for your family, for your wife, for your kids, but you can literally get one. Or you could just work in the government and work in a high cost of living area like Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia, and you'll still won't even make enough money to make ends meet, but you can technically have a job, don't worry. The lies and the spin of the official government reports is really unfortunate. And then obviously there's gonna be people who are in a good position who can say, I have a job. I mean, I've had a job for 10 years. Well, then you're not in the same position as the rest of us who are actually struggling to find a new job right now. If you're not actively looking for a new job, I mean, that's similar to saying, I'm in a healthy relationship right now. My marriage is great. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that the dating scene in 2024 is easy, and it doesn't mean that looking for a job is easy. You have to have empathy and compassion for people who are struggling. Just because it's not happening to you, thank God, be grateful, and don't be so confident and think that it can't happen to you, because we're hearing stories each and every week of companies laying off 100 people, 1,000 people, 2,000 people. So never get so confident and so smug that you're so much better than other people who are not struggling. You need to just be grateful and hope that it does not happen to you. So today I have an article in which I want to talk about how good and how amazing economists and the government says jobs are. And I'll kind of compare that to things that I'm seeing from, like I said, doing research for this YouTube channel, putting out 5 videos a week, and just my experience of looking for a job in 2024 and talking to other people that I know. Because the government and economists might say that the economy is booming and things have never been better, but unfortunately, that's just not the reality. Let's dive in. Our article that we're going to go over today is from Yahoo Finance, And the headline is, Americans say it's harder to find a job, so why aren't economists worried yet? And as always, the articles I reference are down in the description below, so you can read the full thing for yourself. I'm just going to talk about the highlights and how it pertains to what we're talking about today. The article says that consumers are feeling the pains of a cooling labor market. The latest Consumer Confidence Index release showed a narrowing margin between respondents who are finding jobs plentiful and those who are finding jobs hard to get. The Conference Board senior economist told Yahoo Finance that workers feeling less confident about the labor market isn't something unexpected, given a recent rise in the unemployment rate and decline in job openings. But she says it's less of a red flag about where the labor market sits today and more about consumers reacting to a shift from a super hot job market to one that is just strong. And even when you do polls and you do surveys and people are saying, I don't feel good about this job market, I'm struggling to find a job, economists and government officials will still say, no, dear. It's not that the job market is bad. It's just strong instead of super red hot. I mean, this is such BS. I mean, why even ask the people if they're going to tell you how they're feeling, what they're experiencing, and you're just going to completely dismiss it? And she goes on to say, when you look at the history of the labor market, this is still among the best labor markets we've had. But consumers are reacting to the change. And when you're going through something, you don't want to just hear people say, it's fine, it's not that big of a deal, right? If you lose a loved one, you wouldn't go up to them and say, no big deal, you'll find another friend, or you'll find another spouse, or you'll find another parent. It's like, that is not how a healthy, normal adult reacts to someone experiencing something, someone struggling through something. So just to say that it's not a big deal, the job market's actually strong, historically everything is fine. I mean, that does not help. I'm someone who's actively looking for a job. So I really don't care if historically it's a good job market, which I know that it's not. There's no possible way. And I don't care if this is the strongest job market in the history of the world. I don't care if it's the weakest job market in the history of the world. The reality is my actual experience, and my actual experience is that it's extremely difficult. So telling someone that no big deal, the job market's still strong, it's still great, everything is fine, I mean, what's the takeaway? You're an idiot, there's a reason that you're not getting hired, you should not expect to get hired. In fact, if you could just sell all the rest of your belongings and just move under a bridge, that's really where you belong. I mean, what kind of response is that to people saying that they're struggling finding a job? Oh, it's no big deal. The job market's strong. Just what, live in your car? Live under a bridge? How are you supposed to pay your bills? I mean, that is not helpful information. Telling someone that the job market is actually strong and there's no reason you can't find a job when thousands and thousands of people are struggling to find a job. This channel would ideally be about tips and tricks about how to find a job, how to do better on interviews, but people aren't getting interviews. People aren't getting new amazing jobs. So I gotta talk about the reality of the situation. And the reality of the situation is that people are really struggling to find work. And they're getting laid off, and instead of it maybe taking a couple of weeks to find a new job, I mean, people are taking 6 months, a year. This is not a job market that I would wish on my worst enemy right now. The article goes on to say that recent data has undoubtedly shown a labor market that's far cooler than the hot jobs market of 2022, which rebounded following pandemic shutdowns. The unemployment rate has steadily crept up in 2024 and sits at 4.2%, near its highest level in almost 3 years. Meanwhile, job gains have slowed, with the U.S. economy recording 2 of its lowest monthly job addition periods of 2024 in July and August. I don't understand how the author of this wrote this paragraph. This is so up and down. Things are better than right in the heart of the pandemic when everyone lost their jobs. The unemployment rate is fine, but it's like, oh, but it's actually job gains has slowed in July and August editions, talking out of 2 sides of their mouth in the same exact paragraph. Like, I don't even know how an editor of Yahoo even allowed this article to be published. And yeah, there was a spike in jobs after the pandemic, but I think everyone in the media seems to be comparing things to how things were during the pandemic. And the excuse is, oh, companies just overhired during the pandemic and now there's a correction. But I had a good job before the pandemic, and I know thousands and thousands of other people had good jobs before the pandemic too. So why is it hard for the people who had jobs pre-pandemic to have a job now? That's not a correction of new people who entered the job market in 2021, 2022. That is a dramatic drop in available jobs since even before. So it's not a matter of it just being a correction. It's something far, far worse. And we've talked about this a million times, how the unemployment rate is not a real number. If you're not actively receiving unemployment benefits, so if you just have not applied or you don't qualify because maybe you're getting some kind of severance package, or maybe you had the benefits for too long and now you've dropped off, like there's all kinds of reasons. So just saying that there's a 4.2 unemployment rate does not even come close to telling the full story. And that finally at the end of this paragraph, they talk about something that's actually real, with job gains slowing and it being two of the lowest months of July and August. Well, yeah. And all the government does is count jobs that are posted online as jobs created. There's no follow-up to see if anyone actually gets hired. There's no talk of there being ghost jobs that are just posted, and if they're taken down, they're put up a month later. Jobs that are posted just so that they can fairly say, oh, well, I hired my nephew, but I posted this job for like 1 or 2 months. Or we interviewed with people, yeah, sure, but I mean, I couldn't find the right candidate. And now my colleague from my last job has this job instead of hiring one of the people, one of the hundreds of people or thousands of people that were being interviewed. And the article says, job openings in July were at their lowest level since January 2021, where quits, remember quiet quitting, have also ticked lower. This, economists say, has marked a shift from the Great Resignation, where new jobs and hefty raises were plentiful, to the Great Stay, where layoffs haven't picked up, but fewer people are switching jobs. And I don't know if the author of this Yahoo Finance reads the news or reads layoff reports, but I don't know how in your right mind you could say that layoffs haven't picked up. We looked on this channel at August and it was 75,000 people were laid off. We looked in September and yes, things did get better. Only about 70,000 people were laid off. And then yeah, you can battle that by saying, well, 254,000 people were hired last month in September. Well, no, they weren't. Maybe 254,000 jobs were posted, but you can't tell me that 254,000 people were hired. Go and show me interviews with all those people at their new jobs and ask them, hey, how's it at your new job? Because you won't find those people. And yes, fewer people are switching jobs, because what jobs are you going to switch to? If you don't have a job and you can't get a job, then what makes you think if you have a job that you're going to be able to switch to a new job? There's no new good jobs out there. So yes, people are not switching jobs because there's nowhere for them to go. The article continues with, the director of economic research at the Burning Glass Institute, a research center that studies labor data, told Yahoo Finance that the declining number of quits shows that workers are feeling the impacts of a weaker labor market. Yes, if you have the narrative of if you have the skills, you'd find a job, or skill up, or go get a second master's degree or a PhD in something. If you had the good abilities and the good skills, you'd have a job. Okay, then why aren't people switching jobs right now? If someone who is skilled enough to currently have a job cannot go find a new job easily, then maybe it's not just a skills thing. But he says that the declining number of quits shows that the workers are feeling the impacts of a weaker labor market. That makes sense. It's the realization that if they leave their job, it's going to be hard to find a new one. Please, please, if you're watching this video and you have a job, even if you hate it, please don't leave. Please don't leave that job, because it's not a good idea right now. If you have a new job lined up, okay, but keep in mind that all these other jobs are doing layoffs. If you are at a job and you can stand it and it's paying your bills and people around you are not being laid off, even if you can maybe get a new job, check the history of that company. Check their recent reports and see, are they doing layoffs? Because most companies are. So if you're in a position where you're getting paid and you're not afraid of getting laid off, please stay there. For now, the Fed appears to be okay with the state of affairs. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell said in a recent press conference that despite the slowing, the labor market is actually in a solid condition. And what is he going to say? It's similar to how CEOs are never going to tell you that things are going bad. They can do all kinds of layoffs. They could be downsizing, they could be closing stores. It's their job to not worry the investors. It's their job to make everyone believe that things are going well. Even if they're doing layoffs, it's a part of strategic operation and it's all part of a greater plan. They're never going to admit that things are doing poorly. That's the reason that they had to lay off people. That's the reason that they're closing stores. No, everything is part of a much greater plan. Everything is fine. Don't panic. So if the Fed chair says that everything is fine, I mean, you got to take that with a grain of salt. It's his job to make everything be under control, to control the interest rates, to make it seem like the U.S. economy is doing well. His opinion is going to be biased. He says the U.S. economy is in good shape. It's growing at a solid pace. Inflation is coming down. The labor market is in a strong place. We want to keep it there. That's what we're doing by cutting interest rates. And you could cut interest rates. Okay, I believe that the big people that affects are the people who are investing, who have the money. And it's like, man, I'm getting, I don't know, Michael Bordenero says he's getting 5.4% or something like that in his high yield savings account. And if you drop interest rates, I mean, that's going to affect them and people like him, so that's not good for him. You could also say that if we lower interest rates, it'll be easier for companies to borrow money. The reason that companies are firing people is because they don't have enough access to money because the interest rates are too high. Then explain to me how people with millions of dollars are still doing all these layoffs. You have millions of dollars to pay your CEO, so I don't think it's a matter of you don't have access to capital. The other day we talked about a genetic biotech company that is basically closing their doors, and they raised 230 or at least somewhere over $200 million in capital. So you're telling me the interest rates are too high, that's the reason they had to shut the doors? Not buying that for a second. The article continues with, economists largely agree that there are signs of slowing in the labor market, but when taken at face value, the current situation doesn't seem bad. Still, economists like Berger are nervous about what lies ahead. The key concern remains the trend of the data. And most of these data points, Berger said, are headed in the wrong direction. We're in this slow, ongoing deterioration thing. It's brought us to the point where things have changed from amazing to very good to okay. And there's no sign of it stopping imminently. The reason to be optimistic is just the forces that eventually get it to stop are underway, which is the Fed easing. We'll see. Things have not gotten any better all year long, so let's see. And then, yeah, everyone's magic pill is the Fed interest rate cuts. And it says, after heating up briefly during the summer, new data out Thursday showed weak unemployment claims were at a 4-month low for the week ending September 21st. And then we looked at October, and it said, and we talked about this here at the channel, that the unemployment claims for a week in October, I don't know if it was the first or the second week, but it was the highest in over a year. So maybe there was some sign of optimism back in September, but now that we are in the last part of October, things are back to reality again, and people are claiming unemployment. People are not able to find new jobs. People are not able to switch jobs. There's really not like a lot of hope out there. Wells Fargo economist Shannon Seary told Yahoo Finance an increase in layoffs remains one of the biggest risks to the U.S. economy. Typically, wide-scale layoffs spark fear and shock among households and often weigh on consumer spending. If spending slows, business growth slows, and slowing business activity leads to a need for fewer workers. Then come more layoffs and more overall slowing in the economy, and so on. For now, though, that's not Green's base case. It doesn't feel like we're on the cusp of widespread layoffs. It just doesn't feel like demand supports that. It doesn't feel like businesses are really getting ready to shed workers when you think about where their profitability is. She added, it just feels like we're kind of stalling out here. And we do have, some give to stall out without falling into a recession. And reports like these make me very upset because it's like a meteorologist is outside, standing in the pouring rain, and they're saying, I don't know if it's gonna rain today or not. You don't feel like you're on the cusp of massive layoffs. What do you call all these layoffs that we've seen? You could blink an eye and say, oh, it's not a big deal that PricewaterhouseCoopers laid off 1,800 people, but to me, that's a big deal. Shell laying off 2,400 people. There's thousands and thousands of people being laid off by these companies. How could you say these are not mass layoffs? How could you say it's not a big deal? Well, yes, if you're not affected and you don't have any empathy or compassion for anyone else, it's not a big deal. As long as my job's fine, no big deal. But there's a saying that goes, if your neighbor loses their job, it's a recession. If you lose your job, it's a depression. And for thousands of people, we're feeling like we're in a depression because it's not just the people around us, it's us who have lost our jobs and we cannot find new ones. And it's just very upsetting when you're going through this terrible, awful 2024 job market and economists and government officials are telling you, we're in a strong labor market. Things have cooled down just a little bit, but it's really not that serious. There's no widespread layoffs that are on their way because they're already happening. So yes, my opinion is that there's a big disconnect between the government numbers and what economists say and the reality of what's going on. But let me know what you think. Are you struggling to find a job? Have you not struggled to find a job because you have a good job and you haven't been laid off and it doesn't seem like people around you are laid off? I'd love to hear your personal story down in the comments below. Talk to you later.